This is a special report from Fox 35 News, tracking the tropics.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Laurel Blanchard, tracking the tropics tonight. Earlier on this afternoon, National Hurricane Center defined potential Tropical Cyclone 19, which is expected to become Sara within the next 48 hours. So we're going to very much keep focused on that. But let's get to a little bit of preface information before we actually get to tracking the tropics tonight. National Hurricane Center going to be updating us on potential Tropical Cyclone 19. But before, just as Rafael was just starting to happen, we were still getting those updates, still in daylight saving time. So now that we are back to standard time, here is when you can get the latest information. For path updates, it's going to be at 4 a.m., 10 a.m., 4 p.m., and 10 p.m. And for position updates, that's going to be statistics on the current state of the storm. That's going to be at 1 a.m., 7 a.m., 1 p.m., and 7 p.m. So now that we've adjusted that, let's get to the latest update. This is the 7 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center, once again defining potential Tropical Cyclone 19. So we've been keeping an eye on this cluster of thunderstorms for a while. We've been keeping you kind of up to date on why we've been keeping an eye on this zone in particular, and that's because of the extremely warm ocean water that is still in the southern Caribbean. So again, this is what we've been very much focusing on the past couple of weeks, but now it's starting to retake that form, and we're slowly starting to see that circulation start to happen with this cluster of thunderstorms of what we can see now with potential Tropical Cyclone 19, currently holding 30-mile-per-hour winds. So once it reaches over 39 miles per hour, that's when it's going to be defined as Tropical Storm Sara. So with that, here is the latest path. This is from the 4 p.m. update. It was the path update with that. And really, this is an interesting path for sure. They keep this as a tropical storm for quite a while, and there's a couple of reasons why. Ultimately, because there are still so many questions of how this storm is going to be playing out. The biggest thing is, where is it actually going to go? And that ultimately defines biggest of where we can see the worst results from this storm. So with that, we see this westerly track, this almost bottleneck feature with the path before we really start to get very uncertain, because this is a very wide range and a very long area of where we could see the center of this storm happen. And this is why we call it the cone of uncertainty, because truly where we can see the center of this storm can be anywhere within this path. This is just the center line of where we could see the potential of the center of the storm, but really it can be anywhere within this cone and within that white zone of what we can see here on your screen. So with that, let's actually talk about a few of the scenarios, because especially where we see that little bit of a zigzag of closing in right here is ultimately going to determine how strong or how weak, and also, are we going to get hit with a hurricane here in Central Florida? Are we just going to get hit with rain? There are still so many questions, but we can start to kind of figure out the scenarios of what we could see as we take a look towards the end of next week. So really the main two scenarios of what we can see right here is really just focusing in on this zone right here. Most of the models are suggesting that yes, it's going to be taking that westerly track. It's either going to stall out right here or somewhere within this area, and it's either going to sit and spin, or it's going to really just back up and then continue to make its way over the land. So that's ultimately one of the many questions that we still have with this storm. And because it's still developing, that's why we still have so many questions on the table that we're slowly going to get answers to within the next couple of days. So with this right here, the two scenarios that we really ultimately have is if this storm is going to interact more with the land, or is it going to interact more with the very warm ocean water. So let's start off with this side of the cone right here. So if this storm continues to make its westerly track and stays especially on the right side of this cone right here, it's still interacting with that very warm ocean water, most likely going to make a hard hook towards Central Florida. And with this, we could either get a very strong tropical storm or a hurricane impact. So that's what we can see with that scenario number one. However, again, this is still a very wide cone right here, and we actually see a lot of land possibly in the path of this storm. So if we see that interaction with the land, most likely we are just going to be seeing rain here in Central Florida. It's going to weaken significantly, and because of that cold front that we're going to be seeing at the end of this week, it's just going to be swept up and almost sheared apart because of that feature, and we're just going to be getting rain. So those those are ultimately the two scenarios of what we can see with this storm. Here's that first scenario of what we can see, that more interacting with the water, hooking in, almost making a very similar path to what we saw with Debbie, forming here and then actually continuing to make its way up through that gap between the Yucatan Peninsula and Cuba, and then making impact somewhere across central Florida or the Florida Peninsula as possibly a strong tropical storm or a hurricane. So that's what we can see there with scenario one. But if it interacts more with the land, whole different scenario and a whole different ballgame of what we're going to be playing with there. If it makes its way more over the land, it's almost going to get sheared apart. But because of this cold front, it is going to make that hook in, but it's more of just the uncertainty of if we just get a lot of heavy rain, the wind. That's some of the questions that we still have on the table tonight. European model really is all over the place, and same with the GFS. This is a spaghetti model, and this is a perfect reason of why it's called the spaghetti model in general, because look at it. It is all over the place, still holding a similar trend of it's going to start here, slowly start to make a turn, and then somewhere make its way back into the Gulf. But that's something that is still very much up in the air. And also the GFS is showing the same thing with their spaghetti models and all their ensemble models as well, showing a very similar standpoint. But again, these are all hypothetical paths of what future Sara could possibly take as we head through the coming days. So that's something that we are just going to have to very much focus on as we head through the next couple of days, and slowly starting to see this storm further develop into what could be Sara as we take a look by tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. Next couple names on the list, Sara is what we could see with this Tropical Cyclone 19, then Tony, Valerie, and William before we actually move to the secondary list with another set of names if we blow through the rest of these for the 2024 hurricane season. Now, as we do take a look at the 2024 hurricane season, so far it's not over yet. I know, I feel like we've been talking about this forever, but we started the name off with Alberto, went all the way down through Rafael, and now we are sitting in the middle of November. It's almost done, but it's not quite done yet. We have about 17 more days left of hurricane season before the tropics are very much going to start to quiet down, and we are really going to start to see a lot of relief from the tropical system as we take a look towards the start of December. We'll be here to further track the tropics in the coming days, so make sure you're sticking with us here at Fox 35 for all the tropics latest. Have a great night.